A soldier sprints across a clearing, shouting a request for aid from the Rosweiss squad. He reports that of 3 demon beasts, they subdued 2, but 3 of their own members are now wounded. One of the defeated soldiers on the ground apologizes, admitting that a threat of this magnitude was beyond their capabilities. The tall, armored warrior, Rosweiss, steps forward with grim determination. She commands the Rosweiss squad to fall back, declaring with a dismissive scoff that she will handle the rest herself. Her sharp gaze penetrates the darkness of the surrounding forest. From within the dense foliage, the massive, fanged maw of a creature emerges, accompanied by a low growl. The creature reveals its full form, a monstrous, multi-eyed bear, roaring with feral intensity. Rosweiss stands her ground, sword at the ready, facing the beast without a hint of fear. As the beast continues its menacing growl from the treeline, a confident, almost cruel, smirk spreads across her face. She notes that it has finally appeared and vows to tear it to pieces. Her confident expression suddenly shatters, replaced by one of shock. A small child, who had apparently been hiding nearby, bursts into the open, crying out in pure terror. The monstrous bear looms over the terrified child. Its massive jaws snap open in a deafening roar, saliva dripping from its fangs as the child freezes, eyes wide with horror. As Rosweiss prepares to cleave the beast in two, a strange sensation washes over her. The scene of the child and the bear is suddenly juxtaposed with another image, a different child, in a modern setting, about to be struck by a speeding car. She wonders what this feeling is. In that other world, the modern-day boy, running with his backpack, stops short. A realization seems to dawn on him as a faint glow emanates from his hands. He understands. The scene fractures. A young man with dark hair looks on with anguish before throwing himself in front of the car, embracing the boy to shield him from the impact. He thinks to himself that this is his final moment. Back in the forest, Rosweiss watches the unfolding horror, her expression hardening. She turns to see the monstrous bear roaring, its maw wide open as it looms over a terrified child who has stumbled into its path. The danger is immediate. Without a moment's hesitation, she lunges forward, pushing the child to safety as she intercepts the beast's attack. A flash of recognition crosses her face. This is just like the accident from her vision. The scene shifts abruptly. The armored warrior is now in a bed, wearing a simple tunic. A man in a dark uniform asks if he is awake and how he feels, noting that he seems confused. To confirm his identity, the man asks for his name and position. After a pause, the figure in the bed responds, identifying himself as Justin Vandiel, commander of the Third Knight Order of the Lefios Kingdom. His mind reels with this new information, struggling to understand. A memory surfaces. Demon beasts had suddenly appeared at the border, and he had rushed to provide aid, finding a child about to be devoured by a demon bear. He questions the origin of this memory. The memory is not his own. It belongs to Naoki Maihara, a young man with no parents who was the eldest of 8 siblings. He was on his way home from his university graduation when he saw his younger brother wander into the road and pushed him out of the path of an oncoming vehicle. The realization strikes him with crushing certainty. He died in that accident. He clutches his head, trying to process the impossible truth. Could this be what people call reincarnation? He delves deeper into his new memories, recalling that Justin is a character from a novel he used to read. Not just any character, but a villain known as the evil god of destruction and the saint of the nation's salvation, who is ultimately killed by the story's protagonist. A future he now faces himself. Struggling to accept that this is not a dream, he looks at the uniformed man and addresses him as Oriel, asking him for guidance. The commander, taken aback by the strange request, simply asks what he means. In a brightly lit corridor, Justin Vandiel is greeted by a subordinate in a dark uniform. The man bows deeply, offering a respectful, "Good morning, Commander Justin," to which Justin casually replies in kind. He continues on his way, now dressed in a simple white shirt and dark trousers. Stretching his arms behind his head, he muses about the time he used to spend making lunches for his disciples before his reincarnation. Though it's still early, he decides to submit an application to visit the frontier. His path set, he walks down the long hall. After this, he knows he must make an appearance at the morning training session. Out in the training yard, a young knight with dark, wavy hair asks his comrade, Cassius, if his arm has recovered. Cassius, a man with curly, light-colored hair, flexes his bicep confidently. He confirms that it's fine, noting that the healing magic worked quite well. The wavy-haired knight remarks to Justin that the commander's initial response was perfect, which is why the healing was so effective. He recalls seeing a bald man tending to Cassius's injury. He wonders aloud what that was all about and asks Justin what else happened. He then points a finger at Justin, playfully quoting, "Listen what your big brother says." Justin, not amused, mirrors the gesture, pointing back with equal intensity. Their squabble is abruptly interrupted. Both knights, now on the ground, look up in surprise at a pair of boots that have stopped just before them. They realize with a start that the commander himself has arrived. Later, Justin reflects on the incident with a troubled expression. He recalls the grateful smile he received, but a deep sense of unease remains. He resolved that he absolutely cannot trust anyone with what he knows. Meanwhile, Cassius watches the other knights train, a suspicious look on his face. Something feels strange. He had lent the commander his shoulder, but Justin's gratitude felt excessive. He remembers how Justin used to simply tell him to get healed and get back to it. This new behavior is odd. His thoughts are cut short as Justin, now accompanied by the bald healer, confronts him directly. With a stern expression, Justin declares that yesterday, Cassius should have said thank you first. He then commands the young knight to apologize to the healer he had hidden away. He stood silently as the knights behind him whispered amongst themselves. One remarked on how the cold commander was now demanding apologies, while another teased Cassius, suggesting the commander had taken a special liking to him. Cassius, visibly uncomfortable, told his comrade to stop, a shiver running down his spine. His contemplation ended. Turning to face the entire platoon, he crossed his arms and declared that if they had enough energy for idle chatter, the morning's training must have been far too easy. A cruel smile spread across his face. He observed that their fundamentals had been getting sloppy recently. As a remedy, he announced an additional 1,000 practice swings, much to the horror of the assembled knights. He then approached Cassius directly, casually draping an arm over his shoulder. He informed the young knight that he would be excused due to his arm injury. Cassius stared in disbelief as the other knights erupted in protest, decrying the blatant favoritism. Leaning in close, his voice a low growl, he offered an alternative. In place of the swings, he would personally supervise Cassius's leg conditioning by running him into the ground. "I'll be watching you closely," he promised, a sharp-toothed grin spreading across his face. "Aren't you happy?" With the terms set, he addressed the platoon once more, encouraging them to work hard until lunch and promising a reward for their efforts. As he walked away, Cassius was left doubled over, utterly spent from the commander's special training. Later, as the exhausted knights made their way to the mess hall, one complained that his arms were worn out, while Cassius lamented the pain in his legs. Their friend urged them onward. From a distance, Oriel watched them pass, muttering that they should learn to keep their mouths shut. While they ate, the knights remarked that the special menu was surprisingly delicious. As one savored his meal, another noticed their commander had returned. Justin walked directly to Cassius's table, holding out a bowl. He stated that Cassius had earned this reward for his hard work during training and instructed him to taste it. Though surprised, Cassius took the bowl and cautiously brought a spoonful to his lips. As the knight ate, a sinister smile played on Justin's lips. He discreetly held up a small, dark bead between his fingers, revealing the secret ingredient he had added to the meal, his thoughts fixed on his unsuspecting target. As Justin Vandiel calmly grinds peppercorns with a mortar and pestle, Oriel bursts in, shouting in astonishment. He demands to know if the spice is truly black pepper. He then requests that the head chef prepare the meal, handing him the freshly ground spice. The chef accepts, and Justin tells a skeptical Cassius to wait and try the food. After taking a single bite, Cassius's eyes widen in shock. He exclaims that it's delicious, a flavor completely different from what he's used to. As a young knight savors the meal, Justin explains his reasoning to Oriel. He states that knights are constantly active, losing sweat and nourishment that must be replenished with minerals and other components for them to perform well. The head chef is equally amazed, admitting that while he understands adding pepper to enhance flavor, he never imagined a single herb could transform a dish so completely. Justin, however, deflects the praise, telling the chef he is simply grateful for the stable meals provided within their limited budget. The chef, flustered, insists such words are too kind. He then turns back to the knights, asking if they would like to continue eating such delicious food. With a fist raised in the air, Cassius shouts an enthusiastic, "Of course." Seeing their eagerness, Justin proposes an idea. Once a month, they could all pool some money. This would allow for better ingredients and seasonings, enabling the chef to use his full skill without budgetary constraints. He asks for their thoughts. The response is immediate and overwhelming. Cassius and the other knights shout their agreement, ready to contribute without hesitation. As they celebrate, Justin and Rosweiss begin to walk away, and he asks Oriel if he has any objections. Oriel confirms he is in favor of the plan and will handle the matter with the administrative office. With a faint smile, Justin thanks him for the help. At the mess hall table, Cassius eagerly prepares to dig into the improved meal, a wide grin on his face. Before he can take a bite, the wavy-haired knight strikes him on the back of the head, chiding him for being too hasty. Cassius yelps in pain. The commotion draws the attention of Justin Vandiel, who steps forward with Rosweiss behind him. He tells Cassius that while washing hands is important, there is something else that must be done first. He sternly reminds the young knight to say "Itadakimasu," a phrase of gratitude for the meal, which leaves Cassius utterly bewildered. With his arms crossed, he elaborates that it is a prayer of thanks to the people who prepared the food and to the ingredients themselves. He insists that they should always offer this gratitude before eating, a concept that seems foreign to the other knights gathered around the table. The other knights murmur amongst themselves, finding their commander's customs peculiar. While some dismiss it, Cassius reflects on the idea, admitting to himself that he hasn't offered such a prayer since he was a child. He resolves to do it. He clasps his hands together, offering a quiet prayer of thanks for the sustenance he is about to receive. Following his lead, the entire mess hall falls silent as every knight clasps their hands. Then, in a powerful, unified chorus, they all shout their gratitude for the meal. The meal begins, and the knights' reactions are immediate. Cassius takes a spoonful, and his eyes widen in pure, unadulterated delight at the flavor. Sometime later, a man in formal attire approaches Justin, addressing him as commander. He reports that he has arrived for the inspection of the borderlands. Justin acknowledges him, noting that permission had indeed been granted. Now dressed in a formal commander's uniform, he walks through a grand, columned hall. He muses internally that while he hadn't expected this visit today, it was perhaps inevitable, given his relationship with a certain woman. The focus shifts to a young woman standing alone in a dimly lit space. She is Tiara Rose Tailran, the only daughter of the Margrave Tailran, and, more significantly, the fiancée of the Crown Prince. She was ultimately forced into an unreasonable relationship. In the world of the original story, Justin, driven by his antagonism towards the Crown Prince, would corner Tiara Rose. This path led to her being labeled the first-half heroine, a character who, because of these events, would eventually take her own life and exit the story entirely. He walked, reflecting on how truly terrible his original self was. Though he was causing her trouble now, he resolved that he had to explain things to her properly. Ahead, an aide greeted him, announcing that Lord Vandiel had arrived. The aide gestured for him to follow, explaining that the master had instructed him to provide guidance. Justin clenched his fist in silent resolve. From within the room, a gruff voice permitted them to enter. Standing before the grand doors, the aide formally announced his presence. "Excuse me, Lord Justin Vandiel is here to see you." Justin, with a composed expression, prepared himself to enter. Inside, the master of the house, a stern man with a dark beard, sat behind a large desk. He was not alone. 3 knights in formal uniforms stood at attention behind him, observing the entrance with impassive expressions. Inside a stately office, a bearded noble sits behind his desk, addressing 3 knights standing at attention. He gestures for them to be seated, remarking that it is unusual for knights of the border guard to be in the executive office, and calls them a dangerous group. Justin Vandiel, now dressed in a formal dark uniform, bows respectfully. He offers a simple word of thanks. He straightens up with a confident smirk, remarking to the knights that it's the first time he's seen them so proper. He adds that they are usually so incompetent that he must handle them with care, provoking looks of shock and indignation from 2 of the knights. His attention returns to the noble as he explains the reason for his urgent consultation. Vandiel states that during a recent visit to the border town, he discovered issues requiring improvement and has come to report them, noting that the border count is, as expected, highly vigilant. The bearded noble leans forward, asking what problems Vandiel is referring to in his territory. From across the room, Vandiel explains that public order has been deteriorating lately, and he believes he has identified a significant cause. He continues, accusing the Lord of viewing the people of the borderlands as nothing more than disposable pawns. The noble's eyes widen in disbelief as he demands to know what Vandiel just said. Before the noble can press further, one of the knights, Clement, shouts at Vandiel for his insolence. The noble quickly silences him, ordering him to let Vandiel finish. Unfazed, Vandiel explains that citizens are being forced into military service to fight monsters, and then asks what is being done for those who suffer permanent injuries. He looks intently at the noble, his tone sharp. With thinly veiled contempt, he asks if it is not a dereliction of duty to simply discard them. The conversation deepens. Vandiel recounts the story of a former soldier who lost his position due to a severe injury. His child had to take up work at a pharmacy to support the family while also caring for the ailing father. The noble listens, conceding that while the story is unfortunate, compulsory conscription is a necessity for the understaffed border territory. Vandiel counters, asking if the noble would feel the same if his own injured men were abandoned, leading to the ruin of the entire territory. The noble denies this possibility. Vandiel presses his point, proposing the establishment of free clinics in the slums for the poor. He then asks if performing a job that can save those who have been wronged is not a worthy cause. He listened as the noble, Dias, leaned forward and questioned the proposal. What benefit could there be for him? Dias stated plainly that the people of this borderland were his to command as he saw fit. The noble then seemed to relent, closing his eyes and claiming to understand. He promised to consider a swift response and thanked Vandiel for his youthful input. His expression hardened, however, as he clarified his position. While he would listen to any reasonable argument, he found Vandiel's words utterly incomprehensible. In response to the dismissal, Vandiel stood firm. He declared that from this moment on, he would no longer involve himself with Lord Dias. If his resolve was doubted, he swore on his family's name to prove it. Dias scoffed, remarking that it would be quite a problem if such a vow were to be broken. Internally, Vandiel acknowledged the noble's untrustworthiness but knew he had no other choice. His thoughts drifted to a larger fate. He knew that even if he withdrew from Dias's affairs, it would not alter the eventual appearance of the latter-half heroine. An image of Tiara Rose Tailran with another woman flashed in his mind. He recalled the prophecy, when a great evil threatens the world, a saint will appear to oppose it. This foretold heroine was, in fact, that very saint. He remembered a grim detail from the original timeline. By the time the saint was to appear, Dias was already dead. It was then that the crown prince and the saint were to be bound by an unbreakable oath. Returning his focus to the present, Vandiel asked Dias if he had noticed the abnormal increase in monsters in the borderlands. Dias acknowledged it, connecting it to the daughter. Vandiel then explained his theory. The surge was caused by an evil god's miasma, a sign heralding the saint's imminent arrival. Dias exploded in denial, shouting that even if his daughter were the saint, she was still his daughter and nothing more. He reminded Vandiel that the saint is despised by the royal family. Vandiel calmly countered that there was no proof she wasn't the saint, and the borderlands would suffer for it. He then posed a final, piercing question. If the saint were to appear now, what would Dias do? He continued to press his point to the nobleman, explaining that if the prophecy were true, the crown prince would surely abandon Dias's daughter. As his child, she would have no choice but to silently withdraw. The thought was clearly unthinkable to Dias, whose face contorted with fury as he gripped his chin. Despite the man's simmering anger, he remained perfectly composed, adjusting his cuffs. He conceded that, at the present moment, everything was merely speculation, but he felt it was necessary to bring the possibility to Dias's attention. He then clarified that he did not expect to be believed on words alone. With his eyes closed, as if making a solemn vow, he declared his intention to demonstrate his sincerity through his actions going forward. Just as he finished speaking, the doors to the chamber swung open. A messenger rushed in, calling for the lord of the house. Dias looked up in surprise, questioning if the interruption was about Vandiel. Meanwhile, Justin Vandiel stood with a confident posture, a slight smile on his face. This, he thought to himself, was the first step. In the kitchen, a pair of hands carefully sorts through fresh herbs. Time is set aside to counteract the smell of fish, while rosemary is chosen to flavor the meat. This display of culinary knowledge surprises the onlookers. The young boy wonders aloud how a knight commander would know such things, expressing his amazement at the unusual application of herbs in cooking. He explains with a faint smile that he discovered the efficacy of the herbs while researching them. He reflects internally that in his past life, he cooked for his family every day, though he remains uncertain if that experience will be of any use to him now. Just then, Oriel arrives, greeting his commander. He reports that he has successfully collected donations for food expenses, having gained the consent of all members. The plan is to collect 1 silver coin from each person's monthly salary. Justin, caught off guard, asks what this is about. He listens as Oriel clarifies the total amount would be about a gold coin's worth. Though he admits it will be a tight budget to work with, Justin agrees to manage within that scope. He then lays out the plan to the group. He instructs Oriel to ask the cooks for a list of necessary items and have the administrative staff go out to purchase them. Oriel questions this method, asking if it isn't too much trouble and suggesting they could simply add the funds to the existing food budget. Justin, however, reveals his true intentions. He harbors a deep distrust for the current system, believing that if a large sum of money were handed over, there would be a risk of embezzlement. He sees this donation drive as a test, a way to gauge everyone's reactions. With this in mind, he adds another layer to his plan. To avoid any suspicion of impropriety during the purchases, he decides someone should act as an escort. He specifies that it should be someone with an intimidating presence, and Oriel understands completely. The man asks if the escort is for protection. Justin confirms this, adding that it's also to prevent merchants from overcharging them. He then delegates the task of selecting the appropriate person to Oriel. His subordinate then makes a suggestion. The commander himself would be the most suitable choice. Justin smirks, asking if Oriel finds his face intimidating. Oriel counters smoothly, stating that Justin is knowledgeable, trustworthy, and won't be swindled, making him the perfect candidate. He listened as Oriel spoke with a confident smirk, suggesting that with the esteemed commander personally making the trip, the merchants would surely have to conduct their business honestly. Changing into a simple tunic, he agreed to go, noting that he had a forest patrol scheduled for the day anyway. Oriel quickly offered to take his place on patrol and handle the town watch, freeing Justin for the task. He saw through the man's intentions, stating that he understood the situation perfectly. He accused Oriel of knowing the budget was insufficient from the beginning and planning to push the difficult negotiations onto him. Unfazed, Oriel simply asked what he planned to do, reminding him that he must be craving a decent meal. From within his office, Justin issued orders to summon Oriel and instructed the head chef to begin considering which items to procure. A voice from within responded with a crisp affirmation. Meanwhile, 3 knights patrolled a busy town street. One, Cassius, stretched languidly, remarking how lucky they were to have such an easy day. Another knight quickly corrected him, reminding him that it was a patrol, not a stroll, and that they needed to remain vigilant for demon beasts. Their casual conversation was cut short by the arrival of Justin Vandiel, now in a formal uniform and accompanied by an aide. He addressed the knights, Simon, Gaspard, and Alner, by name, stating firmly that they were not there for leisure and must conduct themselves with the dignity befitting the knightly order. One of the knights muttered under his breath about the commander's sudden change in attitude. Overhearing him, Justin agreed, confirming that he had intended to address their lax behavior and would now instill in them a proper sense of knightly dignity and awareness. The knights sighed, their hopes of an easy day dashed. One complained that the commander's only task was shopping, while another questioned why an administrator was present. Justin's voice cut in, coldly asking if this meant their dinner would be delicious that evening, before adding that he had no idea. Flustered by his sharp tone, the knights quickly urged him to get moving, shouting for him to calm down. As they proceeded, Justin turned to his aide and asked if he was acquainted with the owner of the Furlong Pharmacy. The aide confirmed it was one of their suppliers. Justin then handed him a list, instructing that while the aide would handle the main negotiations, this specific list was for him to manage personally. The aide accepted the task without question. His procession through the city is interrupted by a child's cry. A young boy named Mark points ahead, excitedly shouting for his big brother, as his sister, Chloe, looks on. He stops, recognizing the children he had met the other day. He asks if they're out for a walk together, and the two of them confirm. A gentle smile spreads across his face as he rests a hand on each of their heads, genuinely pleased to see them well. This unexpected display of warmth sends a shockwave through the ranks of his knights. They stare, mouths agape, unable to reconcile this gentle man with their stern commander, one stammering in disbelief that he's actually smiling and patting children on the head. He glances back at his dumbfounded subordinates, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips. He knows this is not how his men perceive it. Turning his attention back to the children, he explains that he is on duty. He promises to visit them again with a souvenir, a vow the young boy eagerly asks him to confirm. Justin assures him it is a real promise. With his promise made, he turns and strides away. Cassius watches him depart, struck by how much the commander resembles a true older brother, recalling how Justin had even referred to himself that way during training. The young knight then calls out, asking if the commander might be blushing. Justin freezes mid-stride, whipping his head around with a panicked expression and shouting a sharp denial. His denial is a lie. A deep blush covers his face as he grapples with the overwhelming embarrassment. He realizes that being called Big Brother is dredging up the original Justin's memories, and the feeling is mortifying. Shaking off the feeling, he regains his composure and points decisively towards their destination. He orders his aide to proceed to Frolon, instructing the knights to wait quietly and not to interact with anyone. His aide crisply acknowledges the command. A portly shopkeeper, startled, welcomes Knight Commander Vandiel into his establishment. Justin Vandiel, accompanied by his aide, tells the man to dispense with the formalities. The shopkeeper asks about the purpose of his visit. Justin casually replies that it appears he is simply out shopping for the day. His aide, Florin, then steps forward and presents a list to the shopkeeper, explaining that these are additional items to be delivered to the knight's dormitory. Justin instructs Florin to handle the details, and the shopkeeper agrees to review the list. After reading it, the shopkeeper notes the request is for more medicinal herbs. He thoughtfully offers to bring potions to the infirmary at the same time, but Florin clarifies that the delivery is for the kitchen. Florin's clarification prompts Justin to interject. He confirms the herbs are for the kitchen, stating he is considering new uses for them and intends to continue ordering them, provided the shopkeeper's work is satisfactory. He turns to his aide with a sharp, menacing grin, asking if he can count on him. Startled, Florin sweats and stammers that he can be relied upon. Meanwhile, a group of knights in training watch from a nearby window. Cassius observes that the apothecary owner is being intimidated, likely so the commander can acquire the supplies cheaply. His companion, Simon, agrees, remarking that this is typical behavior for their commander. He then playfully pinches Cassius's cheeks, teasing him about how their commander always smiles so sweetly at children. He tells Cassius to stop laughing, but Cassius protests for him to let go. Suddenly, Justin appears behind him, his face cast in shadow. He asks what kind of expression Cassius is making and demands to see it. Terrified, Cassius stammers that it was just a joke. In response, Justin violently grabs Cassius's head from behind, squeezing his face and causing him to cry out in pain. The other knights watch in stunned silence, shocked that their commander, who so bravely fought a demon beast, could be so cruel. He and the other knights follow Justin through the bustling town square. One of his comrades notes that their shopping is complete and they've managed to stock up well. Another whispers a comment about the commander's unsettling smile, but is quickly silenced. The young knight contemplates the commander's methods, realizing it wasn't mere intimidation. It was a calculated strategy to secure a regular bulk supply agreement. He understood, then, that Justin was prepared to leverage anything within ethical bounds to manage the large household, a necessity he was only just beginning to grasp. As their commander walks ahead, Simon cheerfully remarks that he's starving and looking forward to lunch. Justin, overhearing, reminds them all that they have afternoon training to get through first. The reminder does little to dampen Simon's spirits, but Cassius remains lost in thought, still processing the morning's events. Continuing on their way, the group approaches their lodgings. As the building comes into view, one of them points out that the area in front of the dormitory seems unusually agitated and noisy. They quicken their pace, arriving at the main gate to find a fellow knight rushing towards them in a panic. "Commander!" he cries out. Justin immediately halts, demanding to know what has happened. Catching his breath, the knight urgently reports that the vice-commanders were engaged in a battle with a demon beast. The news galvanizes him into action. His face contorts with alarm as he roars. "Is everyone all right?" With a surge of strength, he rips the heavy iron gate from its hinges. He storms past the shattered gate and into the building, his long coat billowing behind him. The scene that greets him is an infirmary, its beds filled with his injured subordinates. An older man in a physician's coat approaches him. "You've returned, Sir Justin," the man says. Justin immediately asks for a damage report. The physician confirms that while everyone sustained injuries, there were thankfully no fatalities. A wave of relief washes over Justin's face. He then moves to the bedside of one of the injured knights, Simon, who weakly greets him. Justin sits, apologizing for seeing him in such a state, his voice now gentle. He then leans in closer, asking, "What exactly happened?" He listened intently as Simon, propped up in bed, began his report. After Justin's departure, Simon explained, his unit had proceeded towards the East Forest. Reports of demon beasts had been particularly high in that district, but the number that ambushed them far surpassed any of their projections. Simon grimaced, noting the unusual recent activity of the demon beasts. In response, Justin placed a reassuring hand on his subordinate's shoulder, instructing him to focus on his recovery. He promised to investigate the matter himself, and Simon quietly assented. He then turned to his aide, Florin, with a new command. A message was to be sent to the Frontier Count with the utmost urgency. As they departed, a heavy bar was slid across the door. Walking down the long corridor, his resolve hardened. He would request their cooperation to deal with what was clearly a demon beast stampede. His mind drifted back to a past that felt like a story told by another. An episode where he, Justin, had faced a similar stampede at the border. At the time, he had been confident that the Third Night Order alone was sufficient to quell the threat. But that confidence had been misplaced. The battle was a disaster. Their forces were simply not enough. With Oriel at the vanguard, they suffered numerous casualties. Ultimately, the Third Night Order's reputation was shattered. A new vice commander, one hostile to the Crown Prince, was assigned to them, beginning a dark period of political maneuvering that targeted the despondent Justin. He understood now. This moment was a critical turning point. To alter the course of the future, he could not afford to make the wrong choice here. He stood by the window of his quarters, gazing into the night. A sharp knock echoed from his door. The door opened to reveal Clement, the Knight Commander of the Frontier Count, announcing his arrival. In a sparsely decorated room, Justin Vandiel sits across from Clement. The knight begins to speak, offering an apology for the trouble, but Justin's gloved hand remains tense, anticipating the true purpose of the visit. He springs to his feet, his voice sharp with accusation. Clement dismisses the need for greetings as foolishness, demanding to know why a demon beast stampede is occurring now. Right after he had told their lord he would prove his sincerity through action. Justin remains seated, his expression unreadable. He questions Clement's gall in making such a wild accusation and acting unilaterally. He then reveals that his own subordinates just engaged demon beasts in the eastern forest, forcing his entire unit to retreat with injuries. The news stuns Clement, who asks in disbelief if it was the elite Third Night Order. A faint smirk crosses Justin's face as he confirms it, noting that while Clement dislikes him, he at least acknowledges his strength. He adds that reports indicate the demon beasts are organized, an abnormal and highly active state of affairs. His tone becomes severe. Justin presses the point, asking why Clement isn't considering that something unprecedented in a century is now happening. He warns that there is no guarantee of continued peace, and, clenching his fist, declares they must immediately begin inspecting and repairing the city walls. Clement shouts back, refusing to simply wait. He demands to know what responsibility Justin will take if something goes wrong. Justin's eyes narrow at the word responsibility. From behind Clement, Florin calmly advises a review of their defensive strategy, suggesting they incorporate the Third Night Order's deployment. He maintains his composure, explaining that he is merely outlining the worst-case scenario based on current events and proposing countermeasures. He reminds Clement that a borderland with a deep history of such threats cannot afford to be complacent. Justin continues, suggesting that the wall repairs can be considered alongside troop deployment and training, framing both as beneficial to their domain. Across from him, Clement's frustration boils over as he silently clenches his fist, his knuckles white. With a sharp scrape of his boot, Clement rises. He states that he understands the situation and will report it to their lord himself. He issues a final warning. Justin is to reflect on his overreach until a formal reply is given. The door closes, leaving Justin alone in the silent room. He lets out a weary sigh, leaning his head on his hand. To be so thoroughly ignored, he muses to himself. It seems he will have to take matters into his own hands after all. He made his way to the infirmary, where his knights were recovering. Upon seeing him, Cassius called out his title, surprised. Justin approached, asking how he was faring and noting that he seemed to be all right. Turning to the physician in charge, he inquired about the status of the wounded and how long their recovery would take. The doctor assured him that for most, a few days of quiet rest would be sufficient and there would be no lasting issues. The physician added, however, that the more severely wounded would need at least a week of further treatment. Understanding, Justin turned and placed a hand on Cassius's shoulder, startling the young knight. He commended the young man for his efforts and told him to rest well, entrusting the care of the other subordinates to him. Cassius readily accepted the responsibility. His attention then shifted to Oriel, who was sitting on a nearby bed. Justin asked after his condition, and Oriel replied that his wounds were minor and he was already fine. This was a relief to hear. He placed a firm hand on Oriel's shoulder, telling him not to take it so hard and to be a good subordinate by resting quietly. But Oriel's expression was one of simmering anger. Justin's grip tightened, a silent command. In response, Oriel looked up, his resolve hardening as he addressed his commander. Now sitting across from his commander, Oriel explained his purpose. He had a request, born from a terrible premonition he'd had during the battle. He was certain a demon beast stampede would occur within days, a feeling he couldn't shake. Justin considered this, noting that it wasn't impossible. The cycle for such stampedes was measured in hundreds of years, making it hard to believe they were about to face such a legendary disaster. He then informed Oriel that he had granted a week's rest to all who were injured. Standing, Justin declared that he had a clever idea. Things were about to get busy. Inside a stone building, Oriel begins to explain the situation. An investigation into the recent abnormal behavior of demonic beasts has led to the conclusion that it is a precursor to a stampede. Standing nearby with his arms crossed, Justin Vandiel wonders if this is the same kind of stampede spoken of in old tales. He elaborates on the cause: a magic stone known as a fragment of the evil god. This stone absorbs the surrounding mana over a long period until it reaches a saturation point, at which time it expels all the stored energy at once. With this understanding, he lays out the two methods for dealing with a demonic beast stampede. The first is to destroy the fragment, the root cause, before the stampede begins. The second is to continuously fight and defeat the frenzied beasts until their mana is exhausted. He then turns to Oriel, asking which course of action he suggests. Oriel, his expression grim and a bandage wrapped around his head, states that for most, the only option is the latter. He adds that there are almost no recorded instances of anyone successfully destroying one of the magic stones. Justin acknowledges the primary difficulty: finding the fragment of the evil god. He explains that before it releases its stored mana, the stone is indistinguishable from an ordinary rock. While a saint or a high-ranking cleric might be able to sense it, a large-scale search would be beyond their capabilities. Hearing this, Simon asks what their plan is. Justin turns to his trainees and questions whether the conventional approach truly suits them. He declares that since the mana has not yet been fully released and the beasts are not yet in a complete frenzy, this is the perfect opportunity to aim for the stone's destruction. He continues, revealing that the problem lies in the location. Reports have come in of demonic beasts gathering at the site of some ruins in the eastern forest, a place where soldiers sent to investigate were found dead. Cassius remarks on the commander's sharp intuition, while Simon notes that they've been fortunate this time. A slight smirk crosses Justin's face as he clarifies that it wasn't some storybook hero or a saint who happened upon a magic stone in that area. The implication excites Cassius, who realizes this is a chance to become a hero of legend by destroying the stone. He leaps to his feet, eagerly asking the commander to allow him to go to the ruins. Seeing his subordinate's fiery spirit, Justin agrees to grant his wish. Cassius pumps his fist in victory. Justin announces that the search and destruction of the magic stone will be carried out by his squad and the Elliot squad. He notes that the Elliot squad has been gaining strength recently, and with 2 squires on the team, including the capable Cassius, it promises to be an interesting mission. He informs the 2 young knights that he must go and meet with the Margrave, clarifying that this is not a request. Cassius looks on, puzzled by the sudden announcement. He then addresses the rest of the men in the hall, ordering them to await instructions from Oriel and prepare for deployment. They acknowledge the command with a unified shout. Sometime later, Justin stands in an opulent office. The Margrave, Dias, thanks him for coming on such short notice, explaining that he has something important to report. The Margrave's expression is grim as he looks out the window. He laments that the current situation has occurred on his watch, and resigns himself to the fact that, from a certain point of view, the soldiers are expendable. He turns back to face Justin, questioning if he wasn't trusted. Dias asserts that this is an emergency, and they cannot afford to be gentle. Simply increasing the number of soldiers will not be enough to resolve the crisis. The knight captain looks up, confirming that he was thinking along the same lines. He explains that he has been contemplating the root cause of the demonic beast stampede, and Dias acknowledges his reasoning. He then reveals a critical piece of intelligence. The suspected location of the magic stone has already been identified. The Margrave reacts with stunned disbelief. The knight captain elaborates, stating that this region has been devastated by demonic beast stampedes many times, long before his own family came to govern it. The weight of this information settles on the Margrave. A look of profound realization crosses his face as he grasps the implication. If they can destroy the fragment of the evil god, a long-held wish will finally be fulfilled. The other noble in the room then interjects, asking Justin Vandiel for the specifics of his plan. Justin explains that there's a location where demonic beasts are congregating, drawn to the magic stone. He believes that with a small, elite force, a miracle is now within reach. He laid out the command structure for the operation. He himself would lead the death squad, while entrusting the rear guard to Vice Commander Oriel. The styled hair, noble reacted with disbelief, questioning how Justin could possibly venture into the cursed land in person. In response to this declaration, Margrave Dias extended his hand, his expression grave. He admitted that he had no one else to rely upon but the Third Knight Order and formally requested the aid of Lord Vandiel. Justin paused before accepting the handshake. He cautioned that they had not yet located the actual demon stone, and therefore, he could not promise it would be an easy task. Despite the uncertainty, he grasped the Margrave's hand firmly, promising to do his utmost to fulfill the agreement. He then offered a strategic insight, suggesting that the increased frequency of demon appearances was, in fact, a favorable development. He admitted that he had his own reasons for taking on this mission, a personal score to settle, and asked for the Margrave's trust. The styled-hair noble, however, was not convinced. He interjected sharply, declaring that mere words were meaningless. He demanded that Lord Vandiel prove his commitment through results, warning that failing to meet Clement's expectations would not be tolerated. Justin met the challenge with a confident smirk. As the two nobles departed, Margrave Dias quietly asked his companion if it was truly all right to trust Justin. The styled-hair noble affirmed that it was, revealing that he had his own preparations already in motion. Commander Justin Vandiel returns to the compound, where a guard greets him. Without pause, Justin asks for Oriel's location and is directed to the strategy room where the vice commander is said to be working on a plan. He enters the spacious room to find Oriel waiting. Justin asks for a report on the situation. Oriel confirms that they have gathered enough information and that the city guard is now handling the immediate vicinity. Touching the fresh bandage on his head, Oriel admits that their own forces are too stretched to handle everything. In response, Justin inquires about the condition of their troops. Oriel reports that the soldiers are currently checking their individual equipment. Justin crosses his arms, observing that morale seems almost too high, which could lead to carelessness if their spirits aren't properly managed. He then presses for an update on the latest developments. Oriel reports that the subjugation squad has already returned from the site. He details the threat. Nearly 50 monsters of various types, animal, plant, demon, and giant bird, are overflowing from the nearby ruins. He continues his briefing, explaining that while the increase in monsters was anticipated, the presence of magic stones within the ruins is also highly likely. Justin agrees that they must act before a sudden surge occurs. Oriel then mentions he has a proposal. Decisively, Justin agrees to the plan. He places a document on the table, ordering Oriel to arrange for the necessary supplies from the armory. Oriel confirms he understands. Just then, the head chef enters the room, announcing his presence to the commander. Justin turns his attention to him, asking about the status of the meal preparations. The chef reports that the rations are ready and asks if he should also prepare the magic cannon. A generous spread of food is laid out, including trays of sausages, sliced meats, and a large, steaming pot of soup. The head chef explains the menu to Justin: sandwiches, soup, and plenty of grilled meat. He advises that since the commander's magic cannon requires time, the men should eat while the food is hot, though it can be reheated if needed. He turns his attention to the head chef, who stands at attention. With a confident nod, Justin muses that they should be able to eat before they return, and when they do, they can have a proper victory celebration. The chef eagerly agrees. The head chef, visibly moved, addresses him as commander. Justin elaborates, acknowledging that he considers the kitchen staff to be fighting alongside them and promising that their strength will not be wasted. The chef, overwhelmed with gratitude, bows deeply and thanks him, vowing to prepare for the victory celebration and await their safe return. A sharp, eager grin spreads across Justin's face as he declares that he is very much looking forward to it. Under the cover of night, Justin Vandiel addresses a company of knights assembled in a courtyard. He confirms with his subordinates that the supplies have been prepared and the carts are loaded. Assured that the support unit is also aligned and ready, he decides to review the operational plan one final time. He turns to face the ruins in the distance, outlining the mission's objective. They are to advance on the ruins in the eastern forest, believed to be the source of the demonic beasts. The plan is to travel by cart as close as possible, then proceed on foot to swiftly eliminate the monsters and secure the site. Facing his troops again with a fierce expression, Justin raises a fist and delivers a stark warning. There is no guarantee of returning alive from this operation. He offers anyone the chance to withdraw now, promising they will not be branded a criminal for doing so, then demands to know their decision. His challenge is met with stoic silence. Justin closes his eyes, a faint, confident smile playing on his lips as he observes the unwavering resolve on the faces of Cassius, Simon, and the other young knights. As the knights stand firm, Justin's gloved fist clenches. He reflects on the dire situation. The frontier town is surrounded by the forest on 3 sides. If their mission fails, the town will inevitably be overrun by monsters. His eyes snap open with fiery determination. He declares that they must find and destroy the fragment of the evil god at all costs, roaring for every soldier to steal their resolve. In response to his commander's powerful words, the entire company raises their fists and lets out a unified battle cry. With their morale high, Justin announces the commencement of the operation. The company moves out, their horse-drawn carts forming a convoy that travels along a dark, wooded path. The young knights sit in the back of the wagons, their expressions somber as they begin their perilous journey. Their advance comes to a sudden halt. Justin stands over the bodies of 2 slain wolves, his sword still drawn. The knights gather around as he looks into the dark woods ahead, spotting their objective and murmuring, "There it is." The cause of the interruption is a terrifying sight, a horde of demonic beasts. 2 massive horned giants stand as the vanguard, flanked by a large bear and a pack of snarling wolves, while monstrous birds circle in the sky above. Facing the monstrous horde, Justin Vandiel assesses the situation with a grim expression. He notes that the creatures emerging from the entrance to the ruins are undoubtedly powerful. It seems lesser monsters are unable to even approach this forgotten, decaying divine site. He confirms this initial thought to the knights behind him. The creatures that have emerged are formidable, without a doubt. With the assessment made, he issues a clear command for the main force to engage them, urging a swift conclusion to the battle so they can eat and rest afterward. His words galvanize the young knights. Simon eagerly agrees, ready to end it quickly, while Cassius pulls up his hood, declaring his arms are itching for a fight. A slight smirk crosses Justin's face as he remarks on how easy they are to read, telling them to work hard. With his unit prepared, he gives the final order to attack. Under the cover of night, a flock of massive, hawk-like beasts descends upon a large estate nestled within a dense forest. In response to the aerial assault, a gloved hand slams down with decisive force. A sphere of light erupts, hurtling through the air and striking one of the descending creatures head-on. The impact sends the beast plummeting towards a waiting horned giant, while other birds fall from the sky, their forms dissolving. Watching the successful defense, two knights celebrate, with one shouting in triumph. Elsewhere, during a strategy session, Oriel explains the tactical limitations they face. He notes that crossbows lack sufficient power and catapults are too geographically restricted. Furthermore, using fire or explosion magic is too risky, as it could attract even more monsters from the surrounding forest. He turns to Justin Vandiel with a solution, enchanting projectiles with wind magic to specialize their range and penetration, ensuring they can take down the beasts. Oriel confidently states that in this emergency, the border count will surely approve the funds for the necessary wind-ascribed magic stones. Justin smirks, remarking on Oriel's thoroughly rotten personality. The battle rages on the ground as a horde of monstrous beasts charges. Rossweiss takes command, ordering the support unit to sweep the perimeter while the main force coordinates to eliminate the larger threats. She specifically directs Justin's unit to take down the monstrous bear first, and her order is acknowledged. She continues to direct the forces, commanding the Elliot unit to halt the swarm's advance, while she personally draws the attention of additional large monsters. With her sword raised, she rallies the knights with her to advance, and they respond to the battle cry. Inspired, two knights, Simon and Arno, break from the formation and charge into the forest. Arno shouts that he'll take the first enemy, planning to knock it down for the others to swarm. Simon encourages him, telling him to go for it. As Arno rushes forward, a shadowy, clawed hand descends from the darkness and strikes him hard on the helmet. He cries out in shock and pain, wondering what could be so hard as the powerful blow land with a crushing impact. Heeding his commander's orders, Arno prepares to strike the monstrous bear's joints, as Justin Vandiel shouts that cutting its hide is impossible. The commander then directs another knight, Marius, to flank the creature from behind. Both knights acknowledge the new strategy. He lunges, dodging a massive paw swipe from the bear. His sword strikes true, but the blade grinds against the creature's impossibly tough hide, sending sparks flying as the beast roars in defiance. As the bear roars, its attention fixed on Arno, Marius seizes the opening. He drives his own blade into the monster's side with a powerful, two-handed thrust. His strike sends the massive beast stumbling sideways. Seeing his chance, Arno pivots and lands a solid kick against the creature's flank, pushing it further off balance. The kick further enrages the beast, which turns its glowing, white eyes towards Marius. The hooded knight simply watches it, muttering a challenge under his breath. Despite the sword still embedded deep in its skull, the creature remains standing. Arno, kneeling nearby, expresses his disbelief that neither its tough hide nor its mouth has given way. Nearby, Marius shakes his hands in disgust, complaining that they are sticky. He then snaps at the others, warning them not to let their guard down as there are still monsters lurking about. His warning proves timely, as Justin Vandiel calls out that the Elliot unit is being overwhelmed. He orders his knights to reinforce them at once, leading the charge himself and cutting down a wolf-like creature in his path. As he moves through the fray, a confident smile spreads across his face. He inwardly praises Arno for his good judgment. He plants a foot atop the slain monstrous bear, his sword resting on his shoulder. He calls out to the others, telling them to try harder if they want a piece of the action, lest he finish all the work himself. His overwhelming power leaves the knights of the unit breathless. In the foreground, Marius pants heavily, a bead of sweat on his temple as his eyes widen in disbelief. Behind him, Arno and the other soldiers are less shocked, with one commenting in admiration. As expected of the commander, in a clearing near ancient, columned ruins, a company of knights has gathered. One reports to his superior that they have completed a sweep of the area and asks if they should continue their search for the evil god's fragments. Justin Vandiel, their commander, instructs them to take a short break. He orders them to inspect their equipment and make any necessary replacements. The hooded knight, Marius, acknowledges the command. With a single word, deploy, he activates a powerful ability, causing a wave of magical energy to erupt before him. The energy solidifies into a fully furnished dining area, complete with tables and chairs, much to the delight of the assembled knights. They erupt in cheers for the meal, eager to eat while they have the chance. Justin stands over the carcass of a slain rock bird, contemplating how to prepare it. He considers deep frying it in soy sauce for the magic pot, but since he has none, he decides to simply use salt. As the knights eat, Simon approaches him. The young knight reports that there are no signs of demonic stones in the surrounding area. Justin listens, his expression thoughtful. He then outlines the next phase of their mission. The Justin and Elliot squads will venture into the ruins, while the support squad will remain to guard their current position until the others return. He gives a stern warning. If the forward team is attacked, the rescue unit is not to return for them. A knight remarks that the commander is being unreasonable, but just encounters that he fully expects them to be capable of handling such a task. He turns to the assembled group and asks if their preparations are complete. With a confident grin, he declares that since they've eaten, they have plenty of energy and should hurry. Cassius and the other knights cheer, ready for what they call the commander's safe meal. With a final command, Justin leads the squad down a long, crumbling stone staircase into the darkness of the ruins. Inside, the passage is darker than they imagined. Justin notes that fighting in the dark would be a hindrance and tells Marius to prepare a torch. Before the knight can act, Justin holds his own sword aloft, speaks the word light, and the blade begins to glow, illuminating their path forward. He addresses his squad, informing them that he will bestow a gift upon them all. One of the knights expresses his gratitude, noting how convenient it is to serve a commander with such useful magic. The group proceeds deeper into the ancient, dust-filled ruins, their path flanked by weathered stone statues standing silent guard over a grand staircase. Their four silhouettes move as one through a vast, pillared hall, the magical light from their blades cutting through the oppressive darkness. Suddenly, Justin halts. His eyes narrow as he turns his attention toward a long, arched corridor cloaked in absolute blackness. He can feel it. Something is down there. Following his senses, he leads them to a pair of immense, sealed doors. A moment after they arrive, the heavy doors begin to shudder and groan under a powerful, rhythmic impact from the other side. The hooded knight, Marius, identifies the chamber beyond as a chapel. Justin tells him to wait, explaining that a place like this is a perfect spot for something to be lurking. His instincts were correct. He declares that this is the location of an evil god's fragment, and that the chamber is teeming with monsters. As the doors begin to splinter, he issues his orders. He will use body reinforcement magic. The others will handle the monsters, and the task of destroying the fragment itself is entrusted to Cassius. He turns to the stunned knight, explaining his choice. Cassius is the fastest and most lightly equipped among them. While Justin's own magic has its limits, he believes Cassius is the most suitable for a single, decisive strike to break through. A slight, confident smirk plays on his lips as he looks at Cassius, a bead of sweat trickling down the young knight's temple. The rest of the squad watches, ready to execute their part of the plan. On a cobblestone path, Rosweiss instructs Cassius to follow her. Placing a hand on his shoulder, she casts a spell, announcing it as body reinforcement. From a darkened corner, a shadowy, clawed hand emerges. The spell takes effect instantly. Cassius feels his body become incredibly light. Rosweiss observes him, noting that he might have an excess of power but will learn to control it during the coming battle. Elsewhere, Justin Vandiel briefs the other knights. He explains that once the door is opened, a leak of light will reveal the way. Their mission is to find the demon within, locate its magic stone, and relay that position to Cassius. Their ultimate goal is to destroy the stone and any remaining demons. With the plan set, he gives the order to proceed. Following the command, Rosweiss shatters the large, ornate doors with a single, explosive strike. Inside, the knights are immediately met with resistance. As two of them engage a large beast, Rosweiss urgently shouts for the squad to find the fragment of the evil god. Her attention is drawn to a new threat, a shadowy creature with a skeletal face. She identifies it as a Yug, then turns and yells for Cassius to go. He acknowledges the order and sprints forward. As he runs through the vast chamber, a massive wolf-like beast roars. The hall is swarming with shadow monsters attacking the knights. A voice cries out for all units to protect Cassius. The giant wolf lunges, but its attack is abruptly halted as a dagger sinks deep into its paw. The dagger was thrown by Simon, who urges Cassius to hurry. Running beside him, Cassius quickly thanks his comrade for the save. He reaches his objective, a small, glowing stone resting on an altar. With a determined cry to destroy it, Cassius raises his hands, which now glow with concentrated energy, ready to strike. He brought his sword down with all his might, but the stone remained intact, the impact sending out a shockwave. Cursing in frustration, he prepared to strike once more. He grunted, realizing just how hard the stone was. As his attention was fixed on his task, a monstrous, rat-like beast-man loomed over Simon, raising a heavy axe for a killing blow. Rosweiss could only watch, her eyes wide with alarm. The situation grew more dire as a hulking minotaur also advanced. Seeing the overwhelming odds, Rosweiss shouted desperately at Cassius, urging him to break the stone quickly. She told him it was all right to flee, that he just needed to escape. With a final, desperate swing, he succeeded. The magic stone shattered into countless fragments, and Cassius cried out in triumph, exclaiming that he'd done it. But his victory came a moment too late. The rat beastman's axe plunged downwards, its sharpened edge closing in on Simon's unprotected head. As Simon stared up in frozen terror, Rosweiss let out a desperate, horrified scream, pleading for it to stop. Believing he has successfully destroyed the evil god's fragment, Cassius stands before the towering minotaur. But the beast is far from defeated, raising a massive club to bring it crashing down upon the young knight. From the far end of the grand hall, a desperate roar echoes through the cavernous space, pleading for the creature to stop. The voice belongs to Justin Vandiel, his face a mask of pure rage. Flashes of memory assault him. Children and knights who look up to him, a haunting silhouette of a small child standing before a car, and the current, horrifying reality of Cassius facing certain death. He hurtles forward, propelled by a singular, furious thought. He screams for the beast to keep its hands off his brother. With a final, guttural roar, he launches himself into the air, his weapon poised to strike. As he closes in, other knights, including Marius, are desperately holding the line against lesser monsters, a snarling wolf and a goblinoid creature. The Minotaur, hearing the commander's approach, turns its head just as he arrives. In a blur of motion, Justin soars across the stone floor, a missile of righteous fury aimed directly at the beast looming over Cassius. The impact is devastating. His blade cleaves through the Minotaur's skull, silencing its roar with a sickening crunch and a spray of gore. The colossal body crashes to the ground. Justin stands over his kill as Marius and another knight look on, one of them breathing a stunned, reverent, "Commander." A sharp, relieved grin spreads across his face. He made it in time. He gives Cassius a thumbs up, praising him for a job well done, noting that a single strike shattered both the immediate crisis and the lingering trauma. The fragment of the evil god lies shattered on the ground. Around it, the defeated monstrous beasts begin to dissipate, their forms fading into nothingness. A voice declares that Cassius has shown his mettle, noting with grim satisfaction that the remaining creatures are now trembling in fear. Seizing this sudden shift in momentum, the blonde warrior Rosweiss stands poised in a grand hall, swords at the ready. She recognizes the opportunity before them, declaring that now is their chance to press the attack. Her sentiment is echoed elsewhere as a knight captain rallies his troops. He bellows for them to swing their blades one last time and annihilate the enemy before them. With a unified battle cry, the knights charge down a long, pillared corridor, their armored footsteps thundering against the stone floor. Sometime later, the assault has concluded. A group of knights gathers around the remnants of the dark rock formation, the source of the monsters. One of them remarks that the monster subjugation is complete, expressing relief that they managed to handle it with just their own forces. Another knight quickly refutes this, complaining that it was a desperate defense at the entrance and that everyone was on the verge of death. He grumbles about how carefree the others seem now that the danger has passed. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of their commander, Justin Vandiel. Looking weary but composed, he announces that the rest of their comrades are safe. Cassius, standing beside him, immediately asks about the fate of the fragment of the evil god. He holds up a piece of the shattered rock for them to see. He confirms it is the object in question, but notes that with the demonic essence gone, it is now nothing more than an ordinary stone. Cassius then asks what they should do next. Justin explains that their report alone is insufficient proof. To corroborate their claims, they must have high-ranking priests investigate the fragment to certify that it is genuine. He then turns his gaze pointedly toward Cassius. He continues, telling the young knight that he should have retreated to reassess the situation. Justin admonishes him, stating that even though it was his own order, Cassius's actions were reckless, and he must learn to think for himself first. His subordinate, however, simply grins with unwavering confidence. Clenching a fist, Cassius declares that he had faith that the current commander would find a way to make it all work out. He is suddenly silenced as Justin's hand clamps down on his head, ruffling his hair with surprising force. Caught off guard, Cassius can only yelp in confusion. His commander holds him fast, a faint smirk playing on his lips. Cassius protests, questioning why the commander would do such a thing, reminding him that it's hardly a laughing matter for their leader to act as a sacrificial decoy. Justin simply apologizes for making him worry. As the knights finish securing the area, one of them approaches to deliver a report. He confirms that the temple grounds are safe and there are no signs of enemy reinforcements nearby. With the situation under control, Justin gives the order to declare the operation officially over. His duty fulfilled, a sly grin spreads across Justin's face. He realizes what this means, deciding he can't hold back any longer. With a mighty roar that echoes across the grounds, he bellows his next command. Let's eat. A generous meal is laid out, featuring a basket of fried meatballs and a loaf of bread, met with an audible cheer of appreciation. Without hesitation, the group begins to eat, expressing their gratitude before digging in with forks and hands alike. The young knights, including Cassius and Simon, enjoy the food together, their faces bright with camaraderie as they share the simple pleasure of a meal. Elsewhere, Justin Vandiel examines a dark, rough-hewn stone in his gauntlet hand. He wonders if this will be enough to gain the trust of the Margrave, acknowledging to himself that the nobles of the capital still consider him a villain. His contemplation is broken by the noble Dias, who confronts him with a sharp accusation. Dias demands to know why the divine oracle is investigating him and warns that if the magic stone is a forgery meant to gain fame, Justin could be charged with the high crime of disturbing the peace. Meanwhile, back with the knights, Cassius cheerfully declares they'll eat everything. He observes that Simon's usual intimidating expression is gone. Simon smiles, replying that with matters resolved, it's all right to be a little happy. From a distance, Justin watches their interaction. The group of knights sits together on the grass, gathered around the basket of food, enjoying a moment of peace and fellowship. A memory surfaces, a group of young boys, among them a child who resembles Simon, sitting in a row as an adult figure hands them small bottles. The scene shifts to a weathered stone grave marker. Cassius stands before it, speaking aloud to his departed friend. He wonders about Simon's forehead and remarks on how terse he always was. Pushing aside thoughts of the past for now, he he resolves to celebrate this first step toward a better future. In the royal capital of the Rough Oaths Kingdom, a lone figure walks with determined steps through a vast, ornate hall, their silhouette advancing towards a brightly lit doorway in the distance. Within a lavishly decorated hall, Tiara's Tailran approaches a silhouetted figure standing near a grand doorway. She calls out to him, confirming his identity as Dias, and also mentions the name Ernest. The two now stand together before a large window, their forms cast in shadow. Tiara Rose expresses her profound gratitude for his support. Dias replies that there is no need for an investigation into the matter, as he has already dispatched the subjugation night order. Her expression shifts to one of deep concern as she processes this information. The target of this force is the captain of the Third Night Order, Justin Vandiel. She clasps her hands anxiously, her thoughts racing as she wonders what kind of behavior that man is exhibiting towards her father and the people of her domain. In a dimly lit, book-lined room, Justin Vandiel sits alone at a long table, his head wrapped in bandages. A single candle flickers beside him as a grandfather clock marks the passage of time. He waits. Suddenly, he jolts upright, his hands slamming onto the table. A voice rings out, announcing that the subjugation force has returned. Outside, the returning knights are greeted with cheers. "Welcome back, and good work," echo through the street as the townsfolk wave. The knights, weary but triumphant, wave back from their cart. Cassius and Simon greet their commander, Rosweiss, relieved to see her unharmed. Cassius enthusiastically suggests they have a victory party. Justin Vandiel, who has joined them, notes that she seems much more energetic than he expected. Rosweiss, however, dismisses the celebration for now, telling them to rest first as they must meet with the Margrave. She then turns to Florin, instructing him to make arrangements for an urgent meeting and to ensure a high-ranking priest is also in attendance. Florin bows, confirming he will do so at once. As they walk, Justin suggests that she should also rest until a response arrives. She agrees, acknowledging that she should at least change her clothes. A short time later, their arrival is announced at a grand manor. Lord Vandiel has arrived. A voice calls out, welcoming them. Inside, they're met by the bearded noble, Dias. He greets them warmly, stating that he has already received the report of their successful suppression mission and commends them for a job well done. Rosweiss explains that they only succeeded because of the support they received from the Margravia. Dias then gets to the point, mentioning the urgent matter she wished to discuss. He confirms that, as requested, he has summoned the High Priest. The High Priest reveals the reason for the summons. A large, jagged, dark stone sits on the table before them. He explains that the source of the monsters was destroyed, and this is what remains. He asks Rosweiss for her appraisal, as it is presumed to be a fragment of the evil god from the Tailran territory. She listened intently as the High Priest examined the stone, his expression grim. He confirmed it was a remnant of a demon, something he had never encountered before. Lord Dias, concerned, asked if the object was currently safe, to which she replied that there had been no abnormalities during its transport. The priest, clasping his hands, declared that given the object's nature, purification was the most prudent path forward. Lord Dias considered this, thoughtfully repeating the word purification. Rosweiss then elaborated on the difficulty of the task. She explained that to fully cleanse miasma that had transformed into a physical curse, it would necessitate the prayers of dozens of high-ranking priests, which would require a significant donation to the Grand Shrine. She then made a direct offer. Acknowledging that the current monster countermeasures were likely already a financial burden for the border count, she proposed that he could entrust the fragment of the evil god to her. At this, Justin Vandiel interjected. He praised the prevention of the monster stampede as an unforeseen victory, but pointed out that the fragment they had recovered was an exceptionally rare historical artifact. He stressed its importance as evidence for the report that must be made to the king. He then turned his attention to the High Priest, a shrewd look in his eyes. He assured the priest that when the fragment of the evil god was presented to the Grand Shrine in the capital, he would be certain to communicate the priest's deep involvement in the matter. The High Priest, understanding the implication, readily agreed to cooperate. Lord Dias apologized for the inconvenience, but the priest dismissed it as part of his duties. Justin formally thanked him for his assistance. As the meeting concluded, he reflected on the successful outcome. He knew the local shrine lacked the means for purification and would not shoulder the cost. This presented a perfect opportunity to indebt both the royal family and the Grand Shrine to him. The High Priest departed with an aide, stating that he would prepare the necessary certificate in a separate room. He requested to be shown the way, expressing his gratitude for the day's proceedings. Once they were alone, Lord Dias turned to Justin, offering his apologies and sincere thanks. Justin brushed it off, reminding the Lord that the king had granted this land to the Tailran family. He insisted that they could not be expected to cover the purification costs themselves and urged Dias to be firm on this point. Lord Dias, seated across from him, regarded him with a sharp, analytical gaze. He remarked on the profound change he'd witnessed, wondering aloud what could have possibly transformed Justin so completely. He then offered to handle the delivery of any letters Justin might have for His Highness or the young lady. He responded with a confident smirk, cryptically suggesting that the very water and air of the land suited him. Turning his attention slightly, he prompted for the next step. In response, Lord Diaz formally declared that his own soldiers would assume responsibility for all patrols and security details. He instructed that the Third Night Order should use this opportunity to rest. Seated beside Justin, Rossweiss formally accepted the offer with gratitude. Within the knight's quarters, Justin Vandiel hums to himself while cooking a large pancake. Two young children watch from the doorway, and one asks what the commander is doing. With a pleasant smile, Justin explains he's making a souvenir for an acquaintance he plans to visit. The child observes that he looks unusually happy, which seems to surprise Justin, who wonders if his expression has really changed so much. He turns to the children, noticing their longing expressions. They declare that of course they'd look that way. It's a pancake covered in honey, and they want some too. Justin considers their plea with a thoughtful hum. A sly smile crosses his face as he makes a proposition. He reminds them that the final joint training exercise with the Border Earls Knights is tomorrow. He then promises a special reward for the one who achieves the best results in a mock battle. The news of this challenge reaches Cassius and Simon, whose expressions instantly harden with shock and determination. This sentiment ripples through the ranks of the young knights. A wave of intense focus and competitive spirit washes over them as they prepare for the coming trial. Later, as Justin walks with Diaz and Clement, Diaz comments on the unusually tense atmosphere among the trainees. Justin confirms he is the cause, having told them to fight with everything they have, even if it is just the final exercise. On the training grounds, Clement addresses the assembled knights, officially beginning the one-on-one mock battles. He bellows for them to give it their all and not to let their guard down simply because they're using wooden swords. Beside him, Simon grits his teeth, realizing the immense pressure, that even in training, a mistake could be fatal. The knights roar in response. With the rules set, the first pairing is decided. Simon faces Cassius in the center of the ring, both combatants readying their wooden swords as their peers watch. The moment the match begins, Cassius lunges forward. Simon barely brings his sword up to block, struck by the sheer speed of the attack. The initial block is followed by a rapid exchange of blows. Wood cracks against wood as the two knights trade strikes in a flurry of motion, their duel beginning with ferocious intensity. He is brought to his knees, his training sword knocked from his grasp. Cassius stands over him, victorious, his own wooden blade held steady just inches from Simon's throat, ending the duel with a decisive strike. As the match is called, Cassius steps back. From the sidelines, Justin Vandiel observes that Cassius's previous movements were merely a feint. He realizes with a shiver that this display of overwhelming strength is the true, serious nature of the Third Night Order. He stares intently, recognizing the fighting spirit in the young knight's eyes as authentic. Justin questions just how much of this raw talent was concealed during the routine training, his thoughts briefly drifting to the promised reward. Pancakes. That single word, pancakes, becomes a powerful motivator. One of the trainees grips his wooden sword so tightly his knuckles whiten, his determination fueled by the promise of a sweet meal. The entire group of young knights shares this singular, intense focus. Their faces are set with grim resolve, their minds consumed by the prize that has ignited a fierce competitive fire within them. Observing their fervor, a smirk plays on Justin's lips before his expression hardens. He reflects on the incredible dignity of the Third Night Order, acknowledging that their purpose is far greater than just fending off monsters. He resolves that he must accept them as the men he is meant to lead. Later, standing outside with Clement and Diaz, his confident smirk returns. He remarks wryly that they are being thoroughly taken advantage of by the food-motivated knights, lamenting that they will have to buy out the entire stock of flour and honey. He muses that they should have been more subtle from the start. Despite his complaints, he inwardly admits that watching this farce unfold among his subordinates with a bitter smile isn't so bad. However, a more serious thought surfaces. The true nature of the Third Night Order, and of Justin Vandiel himself, remains largely unknown. Diaz turns to him, offering a measure of reassurance. He states that if Justin shares the same allies and tastes as the previous Vandiel, then he can be trusted. Yet, a probing curiosity enters his voice as he asks whether Justin is, perhaps, a formidable or even fearsome man. Before an answer can be given, an instructor's voice cuts through the air, calling for the next pair of combatants to step forward. The knights respond with a unified, eager roar as the thought lingers. A good, fearsome spirit indeed. Several days later, the courtyard of the estate was a flurry of activity. Carriages stood ready, and people moved about, preparing for a departure. A sense of gratitude hung in the air for the help that had been rendered. Astride her horse, Rossweiss looked down at the head chef. He expressed his regret at their departure, noting how much he enjoyed discussing cooking with Commander Justin. He only wished he'd had more time to share his recipes. She offered a confident smile, making a promise. She told him that once she was formally knighted and had her own estate, she would come to recruit him. The head chef, his face alight with emotion, eagerly accepted the offer. With the farewells concluded, Justin waved a final goodbye from behind her. Rossweiss turned her attention forward, her voice ringing out with the command to set off. In response, the head chef and his staff bowed in unison, a deep and respectful gesture as the silhouettes of the departing knights receded. Watching the procession from a distance, Diaz remarked that they were finally on their way back to the capital. Clement added that the journey was long, and they would be living in camps for some time before their arrival. As the knightly order proceeded through the town, They found the main thoroughfare unexpectedly lined with a massive crowd of townspeople. One of the riders looked on in confusion, wondering at the gathering. The reason became clear as a thunderous cheer erupted from the assembled citizens, their hands waving in a jubilant display of gratitude. Voices rose from the crowd, a man and a woman shouting their thanks directly to the Third Night Order. They proclaimed that word had spread of how the knights had saved their town from a dire crisis. Riding alongside Cassius and Simon, Justin listened to their exchange. Cassius noted how the people of the frontier were showing their appreciation, and Simon admitted it wasn't an unpleasant feeling. Justin seemed to concur, just as a child's voice cried out, "Big brother." He looks on as the young boy, Mark, points him out to his father, Dias. Justin remarks that it was a good thing, and Mark agrees, saying it was a very good feeling. The boy continues, thanking him for the pancakes and exclaiming how delicious they were. His father, Dias, then explains to Justin that the lord of the estate had provided work for the soldiers who were injured in the battle. Now mounted on his horse and ready to depart, Justin considers Dias's words. Dias expresses his profound gratitude, explaining that he heard Justin had negotiated directly on their behalf. As Justin turns to leave, Mark waves enthusiastically, calling him Big Brother and asking him to visit again. Justin looks back with a smile, telling the boy to cherish his family. As the farewells conclude, the formal proceedings begin. Clement calls the Third Night Order of the Rayfio's kingdom to attention, ordering them to salute their commander, Vandiel. The assembled knights, including Simon and Cassius, raise their fists to their chests in a unified gesture. Simon remarks to Cassius that the crowd has gotten quite loud. With the salute given, Clement issues the final command. The Third Night Order is to advance with pride toward the royal capital. At the head of the column, Justin Vandiel leads the way on his white horse. Behind him, the knights raise their fists in a resounding cheer, ready for the journey home. Within the kingdom, a grand, white castle stands with its many towers and spires reaching toward the sky. Inside, a regal voice cuts through the silence of the throne room, issuing a command, "Raise your face." The speaker is the king, seated upon his throne, addressing Justin Vandiel. He states that while he has reviewed the report on the demon beast subjugation, he wishes to hear the details directly. Justin formally acknowledges the command. From the side, the knight Clement observes the proceedings with a sharp, intense gaze. Further in the background, Tiararo's Tailran is seated, watching the exchange unfold. Her expression is one of undisguised contempt, her eyes narrowed as she glares at Justin. Behind her, Dias and other nobles share similar looks of stern disapproval. Justin, with his head bowed, internally acknowledges the cold stares directed at him from the high-ranking officials and Lady Dias, all gathered in the court. He begins his formal report to the king. He explains that his initial mission was to subjugate the monsters appearing in the Tailran Margraviate, but his investigation revealed signs of an impending monster stampede. He continues, stating his belief that the increase in monsters was due to a specific root cause. By working with the border count to find and destroy the evil god's fragment, he successfully prevented the stampede from occurring. The king listens, then remarks that it is a difficult story to believe and asks if Justin has any proof. In response, Justin kneels and presents a dark, jagged piece of rock, declaring, "This is the destroyed evil god's fragment." Looking down upon the kneeling knight and the assembled court, the king turns his attention to another figure. "High priest," he requests, "I ask for your opinion." The priest acknowledges, accepting the task. Heeding the king's command, the high priest examines the corrupted fragment presented by Justin Vandiel. After a moment of intense scrutiny, the elder cleric confirms that it is indeed a troublesome artifact. This validation sends a shockwave of disbelief through the court. Tiararo's Tailran cries out, questioning if Justin truly prevented a monster stampede by himself. Beside her, Dias expresses his own astonishment, finding it incredible that the notoriously disreputable Third Night Order could accomplish such a feat. From his throne, the king's voice cuts through the murmurs. He declares that with the fragment's authenticity confirmed and a formal letter received from the Tailran territory, Justin's military achievement, regardless of past circumstances, is undeniable and will be recognized. He then addresses Justin Vandiel directly, commending him for his excellent work and offering him a reward for his service. Justin bows his head deeply in gratitude. As this unfolds, a young noble named Ernest leans toward a distressed Tiararos, assuring her that everything is fine and that he will protect her. She grips the fabric of her dress, her expression fraught with worry. He glances back at the pair, a thought crossing his mind. If he were to ask for Tiararos as his reward, he would have to make his intentions clear. He suppresses a cough into his gloved hand, his gaze distant. Turning his attention back to the thrones, he makes his request. He states that the victory belongs to all his knights, and thus, he wishes for the reward funds to be used for them. Specifically, he asks for enough to cover major renovations to their barracks and to improve their daily meals. His humble request catches the queen by surprise. She quietly repeats the word meals, taken aback by the mundane nature of his wish as the rest of the court looks on in silence. The king, however, reacts quite differently. He leans back in his throne and lets out a booming laugh, thoroughly amused. He declares that Justin's request is like that of a child asking for a treat. He tells Justin that the request is far too modest for a knight commander, urging him to ask for something more substantial. Justin respectfully disagrees, stating that the morale of his subordinates comes first. The king listens, then remarks that this behavior is quite different from what was described in the letter he received from Tiara Rose. He declares the situation to be truly delightful. Standing before the throne, Dias offers a slight, knowing smile, remarking that since coming to this world, he feels as though his life has completely changed. This sudden turn of events leaves Tiara Rose utterly bewildered. She can only stare in confusion, wondering what that man could possibly be thinking. Ernest seethes with anger, questioning what is happening. He reflects that the wicked, almost inhuman man he just saw is completely different from the one he knew. He notes that even his parents seem intrigued by Vandiel, and clenching his fist, he vows never to forget the countless insults he has endured. Convinced there must be something more going on, he approaches a set of ornate double doors. Peeking through the crack, he sees 3 silhouetted figures inside a well-lit room and wonders what they are plotting. Inside, Justin Vandiel holds a glowing sphere of light over the hand of a young maid, with Oriel standing beside him. Tiara Rose, witnessing this, expresses her shock, asking what he is doing, while the maid herself looks on in confusion. Reacting instantly to the scene, Ernest bursts through the doors, shoving the maid protectively behind him and positioning himself squarely between her and Justin. He confronts Justin, declaring that everything is fine now that he has arrived. He accuses Justin of putting on a false persona during the audience and threatens to report his current actions to his father. In response, Justin merely smirks, covering his mouth with a gloved hand. Ernest, enraged by the amusement, demands to know what is so funny. He shouts at Justin, stating that as the crown prince, he cannot allow him to act so presumptuously. Justin calmly retorts that Ernest's manner of questioning is poor, accusing him of simply trying to force the answer he desires. The maid, looking distressed, attempts to get the prince's attention. Kneeling before them, she explains the situation. She was about to serve tea when her nervousness caused her to drop the pot, burning her hand. Justin, she clarifies, was in the middle of using healing magic on the injury. From outside the room, the conversation concludes. The maid is advised that healing magic can cause fatigue and that she should go rest. She expresses her deepest gratitude and apologizes for the trouble she caused. She bows deeply before taking her leave, the door clicking shut behind her. Ernest remains, his expression stern as he watches the empty doorway. He turns his attention to Justin Vandiel, demanding to know his intentions. Justin calmly questions the accusation, asking why he should be interrogated for performing a simple act of kindness. He continues, acknowledging that Ernest's suspicion is only natural, considering all the trouble he has caused Dias. Justin admits that his own words have been insufficient and that he has much to reflect upon. His expression hardens, a sharp glint in his eyes. He declares that from this point forward, he will prove himself through actions, not words. He then adds that while being suspicious is understandable, especially if someone in damp clothes, he would appreciate being allowed to change. In response, Ernest warns him to refrain from any further actions that could be misinterpreted. With a final, sharp command, he dismisses Justin, who is now accompanied by Oriel. As they walk away down the ornate hallway, Oriel remarks that the commander's behavior was rather childish. Justin remains silent, his expression unreadable. He reflects on the encounter, realizing that the prince dislikes the man he used to be. He understands now that the prince is also wary of him, and that navigating this new reality will be a considerable challenge. Inside a well-appointed room, Justin Vandiel sits across from Oriel, remarking that it's a brief respite. Oriel confirms, noting that there is still some time before the evening banquet. He suggests that since Justin has been so busy with the recent expedition, it might be a good idea to take a walk in the courtyard to relax. Justin expresses hesitation about wandering the royal castle freely. Oriel points out that he was never permitted to do so before, but now things are different. He assures Justin that while there will be some surveillance, he should go out for a while. Justin agrees. He walks alone through a long, arched colonnade, observing that as the sun sets, the capital city of Tailran must be growing cold. His thought is interrupted by a sudden sneeze. He stops, wondering who might be nearby. Looking down into the courtyard, he spots 2 figures and seems to recognize one of them. Meanwhile, in the courtyard, Tiara Rose Tailran stands with her maid. The maid suggests that Lord Dias would prefer she change into a warmer dress, but Tiara Rose, blushing, refuses. She explains that she cannot, as changing now would make her later than the princess. As she speaks, a hand firmly takes hold of her shoulder. Startled, she turns to find Justin Vandiel standing directly behind her, draping his long white coat over her shoulders to shield her from the evening chill. Tiara Rose, flustered, exclaims his name. He tells her not to worry about it, reasoning that as the future crown princess, she must take care of her health. He then dismisses his own words, calling it an unnecessary concern, which leaves her looking down with a troubled expression. She clutched the coat, her gaze fixed downward as Justin spoke. He urged her to get changed quickly, warning that a certain noisy princess would surely comment if she were late. Furthermore, he added, it would be rude to keep sneezing throughout the banquet. His blunt reasoning left her flustered. She stammered her understanding and, in the same breath, insisted on returning his coat immediately. She held it out to him, expressing her gratitude for the gesture, but insisting that he needn't have concerned himself. Justin simply watched her with a faint smile, telling her not to worry about it. From a distance, Dias called out, suggesting it was time for them to head back to their rooms. Left alone with her thoughts and his coat, a sense of unease settled over her. She clutched the fabric, wondering if this was all part of some elaborate scheme and questioning what Justin Vandiel's true intentions were. Her mind raced, recalling the persistent advances of Ernest, who had a fiancée from his school days. The memory of his unwanted closeness was still vivid. Unseen, Oriel watched from a distance, leaning against a lamppost with a smirk. He mused that Justin would have to sort out the matter of his jacket, and noted that Diaz was clearly disliked. With that thought, he decided it was time for him to return as well. Under the light of a full moon, a grand, multi-story building stands silent against the starry night sky. Inside, 3 young men in training attire walk down a long, empty corridor. One complains of hunger after their evening meal, while another wonders aloud if their commander has returned yet, suggesting they should probably stay the night. One of them, Cassius, loudly expresses his envy, imagining the delicious food the commander must have eaten at the castle dinner. Beside him, the dark-haired young man simply smirks at the outburst. Meanwhile, in another room, the very commander they speak of, Justin Vandiel, throws himself backward over a sofa with a cry of utter exhaustion. His aide, Oriel, sits calmly nearby. Oriel asks if he is tired from the return trip. Justin confirms, admitting he was so tense dining at the royal family's table that he couldn't even taste the food. Oriel remarks that the constant questioning he endured afterward must have made him even more exhausted. From nearby, TRO's Talran fans herself, while commenting on the rumors of the commander's newfound popularity in the palace, noting how he even smiles for children. She adds that Diaz seems to have lost all interest, perhaps even feigning it, which earns a look of annoyance from Justin. Diaz then speaks directly, his expression grim. He declares that Justin Vandiel is a fake, stating it feels as though someone else has taken over his body. Justin's irritation deepens. At this grave accusation, both TRO's and Ernest's faces harden into serious, intense glares, while Justin watches on, his frustration evident. Despite the tension, Justin later confides in Oriel that it was a meaningful time. Oriel agrees, observing that the commander's reputation has certainly risen as a result of the events. Back in the hallway, the dark-haired knight tells his friends that he can't deny what happened was his fault. Cassius presses him, asking if he brought back a souvenir. The knight replies that while it isn't a physical object, he has some good news to share. He sits relaxed in a comfortable chair, informing his knights that due to their hard work stopping the monster stampede, he has secured them a long vacation. With a confident smile, he adds that since they also earned a substantial reward, he will use the funds to renovate their aging lodgings and even build a new shower room. His announcement is met with cheers. Cassius exclaims in delight, while Simon expresses his relief at no longer having to wait in line to wash off sweat after training. Rosweiss agrees, remarking that while it would be easier if they could all use purification magic like their captain, this is a welcome improvement. The knight's joyful expressions freeze into stunned silence as Justin delivers his final piece of news. He has arranged for their food expenses to be covered in perpetuity. Their shock erupts into pure ecstasy. Cassius throws his arms into the air with a triumphant roar. Justin watches them with a wide, almost wicked grin, confirming that from now on, they can always eat that delicious food. He chuckles, telling them to continue working hard for him. In response, his 3 subordinates stand at attention, shouting in unison that they understand and will follow him for the rest of their lives. Later, alone in his quarters, Justin uncorks a bottle of wine. He reflects that while the food at the dinner party was excellent, the portions had been disappointingly small. He stands and surveys his room, recalling that there should be some leftover rations from their last expedition stored away in a closet he rarely uses. As he sips his wine and muses about building his dream mini-kitchen, the door suddenly bursts open. Cassius rushes in, shouting that he heard from Simon about the captain building a shower room. The sound of loud, repeated banging echoes through the hall. With a pained expression, Justin realizes the road to properly training his subordinates is long, and it must begin with a lesson on knocking. Justin Vandiel addresses a group of men, including a bald man and the wavy-haired knight Simon, explaining the basics of cooking over a fire and with a pan. He looks at them with a confident smirk, asking if they are ready. His attention then shifts to a newly installed kitchen. He observes the large brick oven, noting that it, along with the refrigerator, uses magic technology, but is functionally almost identical to the convenient appliances of his former world. With a determined expression, he swiftly ties a bandana around his head, deciding to get started immediately. Now, wearing an apron and holding a rolling pin, he declares his intent to test the kitchen's capabilities. Later, during some time off, he walks with Cassius and Simon, his long hair now neatly braided. Simon remarks that it's a nice break and suggests they go into town, an idea Justin seems to consider. The group, now joined by Rosweiss, catches a pleasant aroma. Simon notes the sweet smell, and Cassius excitedly realizes their commander must be in the kitchen cooking something. He points toward the source, certain he's right. Fueled by this realization, he and Simon burst through the kitchen door. Cassius calls out to the commander, asking if he's making something delicious, as the wonderful smell has filled the entire corridor. They find an annoyed Justin, who scolds them for not knocking. A terrified Cassius offers a frantic apology. Justin, seeing Rosweiss peeking from the doorway, explains that he was test baking some sweets and asks if they'd like to see. Cassius eagerly asks if he can eat them now. Justin replies that while they are ready to eat, He was just about to pour some tea to go with them, and tells Cassius not to eat them on his own. Cassius reluctantly agrees. He eagerly asks if they can eat the sweets now. Justin, sitting across the table, gives his permission, noting that he only made a single batch and didn't make very many. With that, Justin begins to pour tea for his two subordinates. Simon remarks that some tea would be perfect, while Cassius watches the preparations with wide-eyed excitement. Upon taking a bite, Cassius exclaims that it's delicious. Simon agrees, adding that it's more than good enough. Justin accepts the praise, but comments that it's not bad for a first attempt, though he personally prefers sweets made with eggs. At this, Simon immediately asks him to make that kind next. In response, a sly smile forms on Justin's face. He states that he only made these to test the cooking equipment and won't be baking for a while, adding that he's under no obligation to make them a reward. He privately considers, however, that if such good deeds help change his reputation as the mad dog of the Third Night Order, it might be worth it. Despite his words, he rolls up his sleeves with renewed purpose. He announces that he's ready, deciding to go to a bookstore to find a recipe book since his current repertoire of sweets is quite limited. His subordinates look on, surprised by his sudden commitment. His thoughts drift to the process itself. He reflects that baking uses muscles he doesn't normally work, finding it to be a refreshing change of pace from his usual duties. Within the hallowed halls of a grand, multi-story library, patrons moved quietly between towering shelves, each one a repository of knowledge and stories. A young woman with glasses, noticing someone struggling to reach a high shelf, kindly retrieved the volume for them. She presented the book, asking if this was the one they sought, and received a quiet word of thanks. As she spoke, a man with long blonde hair turned, his expression one of surprise. He recognized her voice, questioning if she was perhaps Diaz's daughter. The woman, in turn, was startled, wondering to herself why Knight Commander Vandiel was there. He calmly explained that he was simply at the bookstore because he had decided to buy a book. He held up his selection, a volume titled, For You, Who is Starting to Make Sweets. The woman looked on, her surprise evident as she processed his choice of reading material. Noticing her stare, he asked bluntly what was the matter and if she had some interest in him. Flustered, she immediately denied it, exclaiming that there was no way that could be true. She then offered an excuse, explaining that she hadn't brought her attendants with her. She added that someone named Annabella was waiting outside with a carriage she had arranged. She listened, then remarked that as the fiancée of the crown prince, it was dangerous for her to be out and about without a proper escort. Even in the noble district, he warned, she needed to be sufficiently careful. She acknowledged his concern with a curt thank you, but her expression hardened. She then stated that she believed he was far more dangerous than any potential threat in the streets. A faint smile touched his lips, seemingly amused by her assessment. Fair enough, he conceded, before announcing that he would be on his way. He turned and walked away along the library's upper walkway, already opening the book on sweets. From a balcony across the way, the woman watched his departure. Justin Vandiel stepped out onto a balcony, reflecting that his business in the bookstore had concluded without any trouble. His moment of peace was instantly broken by a terrified scream from the street below, where a cloaked figure stood on a lower level. The commotion echoed into the bookstore, startling the patrons inside. They looked around in confusion, wondering about the source of the disturbance, and quickly realizing it was coming from outside. Without a moment's hesitation, he vaulted over the balcony railing, launching himself towards the chaos unfolding on the street. On the street below, a group of ruffians had cornered the very woman Justin had just spoken to. One demanded she come with them, but another seemed hesitant, questioning what they were doing to her and insisting she was no concern of theirs. As the confrontation escalated, the cloaked figure seen earlier fled the scene. The apparent leader of the group, his face partially obscured by a mask, ignored the descent. He grabbed the woman's arm, shouting at his accomplices to hurry before the guards could be called. In the ensuing struggle, the ruffians overpowered several bystanders. As one held the terrified woman captive, he suddenly cried out. A small dart was embedded in his leg, the source of the attack a complete mystery to him. A figure emerged from the shadows, his eyes concealed by a dark mask. It was Justin, now clad in a different attire. He extended a gloved hand, his voice cold as he warned the attackers. If they didn't surrender like adults, he could not guarantee their lives, adding that being captured by him was their greatest chance at salvation.